At 6:47 a.m. on August 1st, 1943, Lieutenant Colonel Addison Baker and Major John Jerstad climbed aboard the B-24 Liberator Wench at Benghazi airfield in Libya as 178 heavy bombers lined up for what would become the longest and lowest bombing mission ever attempted. Baker, 36 years old, was a commanding officer of the 93rd Bomb Group, carrying 11 months of combat experience. Jerstad was 25. He had completed his required 25 missions 3 weeks earlier and volunteered to fly again, taking the co-pilot seat beside Baker. Their objective was the Ploesti oil refineries in Romania, installations that supplied nearly 30% of Nazi Germany's fuel. Intelligence forecasts warn of casualties reaching 50% before the day was over. Operation Tidal Wave demanded a 2,400-mile round trip flown at altitudes between 50 and 500 feet, skimming the treetops. The Luftwaffe and German anti-aircraft units, if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more, had turned Ploesti into the most heavily defended target in Europe. Previous high-altitude attacks had failed. The only option left was to fly straight through the defenses at rooftop height, drop delayed fuse bombs, and pray the blasts didn't destroy their own aircraft. The 8th Air Force had already lost 47 B-24s during training for this mission. Pilots misjudged altitude over water, flew into hills during low-level practice, and collided while flying in tight formation. Command estimated 90 aircraft would be lost over the target. That meant 900 men. Baker knew the numbers. Jerstad knew them too. He had finished his tour and could have gone home to Oregon. Instead, he chose to fly one more mission. Baker needed seasoned pilots. Jerstad, the group's operations officer, understood the mission plan better than anyone except Baker himself. Would they survive what lay ahead? If this story matters to you, support it by sharing it with others. Wench carried 10 crewmen that morning: Navigator Harold Sweetman, Bombardier John McCormick, Engineer James Merritt, Radio Operator Cecil Fite, and 4 gunners. Every man knew the odds. 1 out of every 2 aircraft would not return. But Ploesti produced 12 million barrels of refined petroleum each year. Every day those refineries operated, German tanks pushed deeper into Russia, U-boats hunted Allied convoys, and Messerschmitts tore into bomber formations over Germany. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Destroying Ploesti could shorten the war by months and save thousands of Allied lives. The mission justified the risk. Baker had briefed his group 3 times, stressing timing above all else. The entire operation depended on 5 bomb groups striking their target simultaneously at exactly 9:30 a.m. Romania time. The goal was to spread defensive fire and overwhelm anti-aircraft crews. Any delay would concentrate enemy defenses. Any deviation from the flight plan would spell disaster. Each bomb group had assigned targets. The 93rd was tasked with the Astra Romana and Uniria refineries. Baker's aircraft would fly at the head of the formation. He would lead from the front, showing his men the path through. At 7 a.m., engines roared across Benghazi airfield. 178 B-24s lifted into the morning sky, formed up over the Mediterranean, then turned north toward Romania. The formation stretched for miles at 19,000 feet. From there, they would descend to wave-top height over the Aegean Sea, remain low across Greece and Yugoslavia, and reach Ploesti beneath German radar coverage. Baker settled into his seat. Jerstad took position beside him. Wench held the lead spot, with 17 aircraft from the 93rd directly behind. 3 hours into the mission, B-24 from the lead navigation group lost power over the Mediterranean. It was the aircraft carrying the mission's primary navigator. The bomber descended toward the water, attempted an emergency landing, struck the waves at 140 miles per hour, and broke apart. All crew were lost. In an instant, the operation had lost its pathfinder. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. No backup navigator possessed the full route. Baker watched the formation press on. Something was already wrong. The bombers crossed the Greek coast at 9,000 feet, then dropped to 500 feet over Yugoslavia. They flew so low pilots could make out individual trees. Sheep scattered as the aircraft thundered overhead. The plan relied on terrain masking. German radar couldn't track aircraft flying below hilltops, but low altitude increased fuel burn, and navigation errors became deadly. A single wrong turn at this height could send the entire formation into a mountainside. Baker checked his instruments. Fuel consumption was steady. Engines ran smooth. Behind him, the 17 B-24s of the 93rd held tight formation. To his left and right, the other bomb groups filled the sky. The 44th, the 98th, the 76th, and the 376th. 5 groups. 177 aircraft still airborne. One target, 30 minutes ahead. At 9:05 a.m. Romania time, the formation reached the initial point near Ploesti, the IP, where the bombers were to turn east toward their targets. This was the most critical moment of the mission. Each group had to identify the correct landmarks, turn at precisely the right point, and follow the proper valleys to its assigned refinery. With the lead navigator gone, the mission commander's aircraft assumed navigation. Baker watched the lead group begin its turn. They turned toward Bucharest. The wrong city. The wrong direction. Baker recognized the mistake instantly. The lead group had confused one valley for another. A single navigation error at 500 feet. But Bucharest lay 30 miles southeast of Ploesti. The lead group was pulling 3 bomb groups, more than 100 aircraft, away from the target, away from the mission. The attack plan was unraveling. Baker seized the radio transmitter and tried to reach the mission commander. Radio discipline had been rigid throughout the flight. Transmissions were kept to a minimum. German listening stations were tracking them, but this was an emergency. The mission was about to fail. Baker called again and again. No reply. Either the lead aircraft wasn't monitoring the frequency, or the signal couldn't get through. German jamming began the instant the formation crossed into Romania. The airwaves dissolved into static. Jerstad looked at Baker. The choice was clear. Follow the lead group to the wrong objective and sacrifice the entire mission, or break formation. Turn the 93rd alone toward Ploesti. Led 17 aircraft into the most heavily defended target in Europe without support from the other groups. No coordinated strike. No divided defenses. Every German gun would be trained on the 93rd. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Command had projected 50% losses with all groups attacking together. What would the cost be with one group attacking alone? Baker made his decision in 5 seconds. He banked Hell's Wench hard to the left, away from the lead group, toward Ploesti. Behind him, every aircraft of the 93rd followed. 17 B-24s peeled away from the main formation. The original plan called for 94 bombers hitting Ploesti at once. Now Baker was leading 18 aircraft toward targets meant to be attacked by 5 times that number. German radar operators saw the split. Flak battery commanders received immediate reports. American bombers approaching from the south. Small formation. 18 aircraft. Altitude 500 feet. Speed 210 miles per hour. Every available gun crew in Ploesti received the same order. Concentrate all fire on this group. Stop them before they reach the refineries. Baker aimed Hell's Wench toward the smokestacks of Astra Romana. 11 miles ahead. 10 minutes of flying time. Jerstad scanned the horizon through the co-pilot's window. Black smoke was already rising over the city. And something else. Small dark shapes lifting from the ground around the refineries. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Barrage balloons. Steel cables hung beneath them, designed to tear apart low-flying bombers. The cables would slice wings, rip through fuselages, and wrench engines from mounts. Ploesti's defenders had raised every balloon in the city. Hell's Wench was flying straight into a forest of steel. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. At 9:17 a.m., Hell's Wench entered the Ploesti defense zone at 470 feet. The city spread out ahead, 7 major refineries, miles of pipelines, cracking towers, storage tanks, smokestacks pouring black smoke, and above it all, barrage balloons. 300 of them. Steel cables stretching from ground to balloon. Each cable was meant to snare an aircraft's wings, tear them away, and send the bomber crashing into the ground. Baker had no option on altitude. The mission demanded bombing at chimney height. The delayed fuses needed time to arm. Dropped from normal bombing altitude, the bombs would detonate too early, failing to penetrate the refinery structures. The success of the mission depended on flying low, flying straight through those cables. The crews of the 93rd had trained for this. They practiced low-level bombing runs over desert targets in Libya. But training targets didn't fire back. Training balloons didn't carry steel cables. Behind Hell's Wench, 17 B-24s held tight formation. Nose gunners tracked the balloons ahead. Top turret gunners searched the sky for fighters. The Luftwaffe had positioned 200 fighters at airfields around Ploesti, Mi-109s, Focke-Wulf 190 as Romanian IAR-81s. Intelligence expected waves of fighter attacks during the bomb run. So far, none appeared. German commanders were holding them back. The flak batteries would deal with the bombers first. The first 88mm shell burst 200 feet ahead of Hell's Wench. Black smoke, orange flash, shrapnel sprayed outward. Baker flew straight through the blast. The aircraft shuddered. More explosions erupted across the sky. The German gun crews had the range. Ploesti's defenses included 230 flak guns, 88s, heavy and light AAA batteries, machine gun nests on rooftops. Every weapon opened fire at once. The sky filled with tracers, red streaks reaching toward the formation, black puffs of bursting shells. The barrage was so dense pilots could barely see through it. A balloon cable appeared directly ahead. Baker hauled the controls left. Hell's Wench bank hard. The cable missed the right wing by 20 feet. Another cable loomed to the left. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Baker rolled right, threading through the forest, dodging cables that materialized without warning through smoke and debris. Jerstad called out positions. High cable left. Low cable right. Baker flew on instinct. The refineries were 3 miles ahead. 3 minutes to go. The formation had to stay together. They had to reach the target. An 88 shell detonated beneath Hell's Wench. The blast lifted the aircraft 30 feet. Shrapnel ripped through the belly, puncturing fuel tanks, shredding hydraulic lines. Red warning lights flashed across the instrument panel. Fuel pressure dropped on number 3 engine. Oil temperature spiked on number 1. The aircraft was bleeding, but the engines were still running. The controls still answered. Baker kept flying. 2 miles from the target. Another barrage balloon ahead. Baker aimed between 2 cables, gauged the gap, 40 feet of clearance on either side. Enough. He committed to the path. Then the aircraft lurched. A violent jolt on the right wing. The B-24 had struck a cable Baker never saw. The steel wire scraped along the wing's leading edge, tearing aluminum. It snagged on the outboard engine nacelle. The balloon was now tethered to Hell's Wench, 300 pounds of rubber and canvas dragging from the right wing, creating massive asymmetric drag. The aircraft pulled hard to the right. Baker wrestled the controls, fighting to hold course. Another shell exploded. This one hit home. An 88mm round slammed into the right wing root, punching through the fuel tank. Aviation gasoline sprayed into the engine compartment. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Hot metal, sparking electrical systems, leaking fuel, the mixture ignited instantly. Orange flames burst from the wing and raced toward the fuselage. Hell's Wench was on fire. 1 mile from the target. 60 seconds to the release point. Baker glanced down. An open field lay below, flat, clear, ideal for an emergency landing. They could set down safely. The entire crew could live, or they could continue the bomb run. Baker kept the nose pointed at the Astra Romana refinery. The fire spread across the right wing, flames rolling back toward the fuselage. The metal skin glowed red. The cockpit temperature climbed. Smoke filled the aircraft. The crew could bail out. With open ground below, every man could parachute safely. Or Baker could land, execute an emergency landing, and walk away. The mission would fail. 17 B-24s were flying directly behind Hell's Wench. If Baker landed now, they would follow. The entire 93rd would abort. The mission would collapse. Jerstad understood the calculation. He had flown 25 missions, beaten the odds, earned his trip home. Now he sat in a burning bomber with a final choice, survival or mission. He didn't reach for the bailout handle. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. He didn't suggest landing. He checked the bomb release panel, confirmed the delayed fuses were armed, and prepared for the drop. Baker understood. They were pressing on. The flames intensified. Fire consumed the right wing from engine to tip. The aluminum structure began to fail. Rivets popped under heat stress. Panels curled and peeled away. The wing was coming apart, yet it still produced lift. The aircraft still flew. 45 seconds to target. The bomb bay doors were already open. Bombardier John McCormick lay prone in the nose, tracking the refinery through the Norden bomb site, cracking towers, storage tanks, pipelines. The primary targets filled his view. Behind Hell's Wench, the 93rd held formation. Every pilot saw the fire. Every crew knew their lead aircraft was dying. But Baker hadn't turned away. He hadn't landed. So they followed. 17 B-24s flew through flak, through balloon cables, through smoke so thick visibility dropped to 100 feet. They followed Hell's Wench because Baker and Jerstad were still flying. German gunners focused everything on the burning bomber. Every tracer, every shell. If the lead aircraft fell, the formation would scatter. 88mm rounds detonated non-stop around Hell's Wench. One burst so close that shrapnel tore through the left horizontal stabilizer. The aircraft yawed violently. Baker fought the controls, working rudder and aileron together, holding the nose steady. The bomb site demanded stable flight. Any deviation meant a missed target. A wasted mission. Wasted lives. 30 seconds. The refineries filled the windscreen. Cracking towers rose 300 feet into the air. Hell's Wench flew between the targets at 400 feet. Wings level. Speed steady. The fire had now reached the fuselage. Flames licked along the cockpit windows. Paint blistered. Glass cracked from the heat. Oxygen masks supplied breathable air, but the temperature was unbearable. Baker's hands blistered on the control yoke. He held the course. McCormick centered the crosshairs. The delayed fuse bombs were designed to penetrate buildings before detonating, to inflict maximum structural damage and destroy refining equipment. He waited for the precise release point, calculated trajectory, accounted for wind, altitude, and speed. The numbers aligned. He pressed the release. 4,000 pounds of high explosives dropped from the bomb bay toward the Astra Romana facility. Hell's Wench lurched upward as the weight released. Behind them, the formation released simultaneously 18 aircraft, 72,000 pounds of bombs. The delayed fuses meant explosions would occur in waves. First bombs penetrating deep into structures, then detonating, followed by the next wave, and then the next. The refinery was about to be destroyed, but Hell's Wench remained in the blast radius. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Baker pulled back on the yoke, trying to gain altitude and escape the coming explosions. The right wing barely responded. Fire had destroyed the control surfaces. The aircraft climbed slowly, 100 feet per minute. Not enough. 18 seconds to detonation. The blast radius extended 1,000 feet. Hell's Wench was 400 feet above the ground, 500 feet past the target, still climbing, still burning. The wing structure was failing. Fire had reached the center fuel tanks. 18 seconds expired. The first explosion erupted beneath Hell's Wench. A delayed fuse bomb detonated inside the main cracking tower. The structure disintegrated. Steel beams shot outward. The blast wave hit the burning B-24 like a solid wall. The aircraft tumbled, rolling 30 degrees to the right. Baker fought the controls, leveled the wings. More explosions followed, sequential detonations as bombs penetrated refinery buildings before exploding. The entire Astra Romana facility collapsed. Fireballs soared 300 feet. Black smoke mushroomed skyward. The 93rd had struck perfectly. Behind Hell's Wench, the formation scattered. Each B-24 veered away from the target, seeking escape through flak, smoke, and balloon cables. Some climbed cleanly and turned south toward Libya. Others weren't as fortunate. A B-24 from the 93rd hit a balloon cable at full speed. The wire shredded the left wing. The bomber rolled inverted and slammed into a storage tank, exploding instantly. 10 men were killed. Another B-24 took a direct hit from an 88mm shell. The round penetrated the bomb bay, detonating remaining bombs on the racks. The aircraft vanished in an orange fireball. Fragments scattered across 200 yards. No parachutes. No survivors. A third bomber flew straight into a flak barrage. A 20mm round tore across the fuselage, killing the pilot and wounding the co-pilot. The aircraft nosed over, striking the ground at 200 miles per hour, cartwheeling through a residential area. 14 civilians died alongside the crew. The 93rd was paying the predicted price. Command had estimated 50% casualties, even with full formation support. Baker's group was attacking alone, one-fifth the planned aircraft, against Ploesti's full defensive network. The mathematics were brutal. 18 bombers had entered the target zone. 4 were already gone, 40 men dead. The survivors were still clawing their way out. Hell's Wench climbed through smoke at 800 feet, still burning. The right wing was completely engulfed. Flames spread to the fuselage. The cockpit filled with black smoke. Visibility was 0. Baker flew entirely by instruments: airspeed, altitude, heading. The gauges reported critical failures. Number 3 engine seized. Number 4 losing oil pressure. Number 1 running hot. Only number 2 operated normally. The aircraft flew on 1 functioning engine and 3 dying ones. Jerstad scanned the instruments, checked fuel levels. Both right-wing tanks were empty, ruptured by flak. Leaking fuel had fed the fire. Left-wing tanks held half capacity. Maybe 30 minutes of flying time remained. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The Mediterranean coast lay 90 minutes south. They wouldn't make it. The aircraft was dying. But at 800 feet, the crew could bail out. All 10 men could survive. Land in Romanian territory, become prisoners of war, but alive. Baker assessed the situation. The mission was complete. The 93rd had destroyed their assigned targets. Bombs had devastated the Astra Romana refinery. The other bombers were escaping. Some would make it back to Libya, some wouldn't. Germany's fuel supply was crippled. The cost had been enormous, at least 4 aircraft lost, probably more. Hell's Wench was finished. No chance of reaching friendly territory. The smart decision was immediate bailout to save the crew. But Baker knew the statistics. Bailing out over Romania meant capture, interrogation, prison camps, years of captivity. Some crew members might not survive that. Harsh conditions, disease, malnutrition. If Germany lost the war, some prisoners might never return home. Executions happened. Massacres. The SS had killed prisoners before. It could happen again. Baker made another calculation. Hell's Wench still flew. Damage, burning, dying, but flying. If he could gain more altitude, the crew could bail out over Yugoslavia, partisan territory. Friendly forces operated there, rescued downed airmen, smuggled them back to Allied lines. Higher altitude meant a longer glide after engine failure, a better chance of reaching partisan zones, but climbing meant staying in the burning aircraft longer. The fire was spreading. Time was running out. Baker pulled back on the yoke. Hell's Wench climbed slowly, 900 feet, 1,000, 1,200. Every 100 feet improved the crew's survival odds, but every increment cost precious time the aircraft didn't have. The fire had consumed half the fuselage. Flames burned through electrical systems. Radio went dead. Intercom failed. Baker could no longer communicate with the crew. He couldn't order a bailout. He couldn't coordinate an evacuation. Each man now had to decide for himself. Engineer James Merritt stood in the cockpit doorway, watching Baker and Jerstad wrestle the controls, seeing the flames creep toward the cockpit, feeling the heat radiate through the metal skin. He understood what Baker was doing, climbing to give everyone a better chance. Merritt returned to his station. He didn't bail out. He stayed at his post, monitored the failing engines, adjusted fuel mixtures, transferred fuel from damaged tanks to those still functioning, buying them precious minutes. Behind Merritt, the 4 gunners remained at their positions. The top turret gunners scanned the sky for enemy fighters. Waist gunners watched for pursuing Messerschmitts. The tail gunner guarded the 6 o'clock position. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. No fighters appeared. The Luftwaffe had withdrawn. German commanders knew Hell's Wench was finished. There was no need to waste ammunition. The burning bomber would fall on its own. Through gaps in the smoke, the gunners could see the ground below. Romanian fields, villages, enemy territory. Still, they stayed at their stations. At 1,500 feet, the aircraft shuddered violently. Number 4 engine seized completely. The propeller windmilled, creating massive drag. Baker countered with rudder as the aircraft yawed right, forcing it level. 3 engines remained. Number 1 was running on failing oil pressure. Number 2 still produced full power. Number 3 had restarted briefly after cooling but ran rough, damaged, delivering minimal thrust. The right wing was structurally failing. Fire had burned through primary spars, load-bearing members. Under aerodynamic stress, the wing bent upward. Metal groaned. Rivets popped like gunshots. The wing was folding. When it failed, the aircraft would roll inverted and spin into the ground. There would be no time to bail out. Everyone would die in the crash. Baker needed more altitude, enough that when the wing finally gave way, the crew could escape the tumbling aircraft. 1,700 feet. They were 15 miles south of Ploesti now, still over Romania, still enemy territory, but edging closer to Yugoslavia. Partisan-controlled areas lay 40 miles ahead. If they could hold altitude for 10 more minutes, they might reach friendly ground. The crew could bail out safely, be rescued, and return to the fight. Baker pushed the aircraft harder, demanding performance it could no longer deliver. The remaining engines screamed, overheated, began to fail. Number 1 engine caught fire, separate from the wing blaze. Oil ignited inside the nacelle. Flames burst from the cowling. The fire spread to number 2 engine, the last engine producing full power. Baker watched his final good engine begin to burn. He had maybe 90 seconds before total power loss. 90 seconds to gain every possible foot of altitude. He kept climbing. Bombardier John McCormick lay in the nose, watching the ground slide beneath them, calculating trajectory. Airspeed was dropping. Altitude increased slowly. Rate of climb decreased. The math was unforgiving. They would not reach Yugoslavia. The engines would fail before the border. The aircraft would crash in Romania. McCormick didn't move toward the escape hatch. He didn't prepare to bail out. He stayed at his station, trusting Baker's judgment. 1,900 feet. Number 2 engine died. It simply stopped. No explosion. No sudden catastrophic noise. The engine simply quit, starved of oil, seized for heat, gone. Hell's Winch now flew on 2 damaged engines. Number 3 ran rough. Number 1 burned. The aircraft could no longer hold altitude. It began a slow descent, 100 feet per minute, then 200. The descent accelerated. Baker had run out of options. The crew had maybe 60 seconds to bail out before the aircraft became uncontrollable. He needed to give the order, but the intercom was dead. He couldn't tell them to jump. And at that moment, the right wing failed. The wings separated at the root. 28 feet of structure, 2 engines, fuel tanks, all ripped away in one catastrophic failure. The sudden loss of lift on the right rolled Hell's Winch violently. The aircraft snap-rolled left, inverted in 2 seconds. Centrifugal force pinned everyone against the walls, movement impossible. Escape hatches were now above them. Gravity worked against any hope of exit. Baker fought the controls, but it was useless. With one wing gone, aerodynamic forces overwhelmed every input. The rudder had no effect. The ailerons couldn't counter the roll. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The aircraft tumbled, spinning toward the ground in an uncontrollable descent. Through the windscreen, Baker saw earth and sky alternating rapidly. The horizon spun. The altimeter unwound. 1,800. 1,600. 400 feet, descending at 3,000 feet per minute. The crew knew what was happening. They felt the violent roll, understood the wing had failed. Merritt grabbed handholds but couldn't reach them. Centrifugal force slammed him against bulkheads. The gunners tumbled through the fuselage, crashing into equipment, into each other, into the burning walls. McCormick in the nose watched the ground rush upward, calculated impact in 28 seconds. He didn't scream, didn't panic. He just watched. Jerstad remained strapped in the co-pilot seat. The harness held him despite the violent rotation. He looked at Baker. Both men knew the end had come. No bailout possible. No emergency landing. No survival. The aircraft was a spinning coffin. They had completed the mission, led the 93rd to the target, destroyed the refinery, flown when they could have landed safely. This was the consequence. 1,000 feet. The spin accelerated. Aerodynamic forces built with increasing airspeed. The aircraft rotated faster, 4 revolutions per second. The remaining left wing began failing under the stress. Metal screamed. Fire spread through the fuselage, consuming everything. Ammunition for the .50 caliber guns cooked off, rounds exploding randomly, bullets ricocheting through the interior, adding chaos to the catastrophe. The ground details became clear: trees, roads, farm buildings, Romanian farmers' working fields. They looked up and saw the burning bomber spiraling down, black smoke trailing in a corkscrew pattern. The sound was immense: screaming engines, rushing wind, exploding ammunition. Farmers ran, scattering from the impact point, knowing what was coming. 600 feet. Hell's Winch completed its final rotation. The nose pointed almost straight down. The remaining engines still ran, still pushing the aircraft faster toward the ground. Baker saw the impact point, a bare field. The aircraft would hit at over 300 miles per hour. Then would be instant. No pain, no drawn-out suffering, just sudden finality. 300 feet. Jerstad reached across the cockpit, gripped Baker's shoulder. A final gesture of acknowledgement. They had flown together, faced the impossible together, and would die together. Baker nodded once, hands steady on the controls, dying in the line of duty. Pilot to the end. Hell's Winch struck the ground at 9:47 a.m. Romania time. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. 3,000 pounds of remaining fuel detonated on impact, creating a crater 15 feet deep and 40 feet across. Debris scattered over 200 yards. The aircraft was destroyed completely. All 10 crew members perished instantly. Lieutenant Colonel Addison Baker, Major John Jerstad, Navigator Harold Sweetman, Bombardier John McCormick, Engineer James Merritt, Radio Operator Cecil Fight, and 4 gunners identified by dog tags recover from the wreckage. The commander who led from the front, the volunteer who chose one more mission, and 8 men who followed them into Helgon. Romanian authorities arrived within the hour to recover the remains. 10 Americans, who had flown 1,500 miles to destroy oil refineries, had succeeded and paid the ultimate price. Their bodies were buried in a local cemetery, marked with wooden crosses. The war moved on without them, but their mission had changed everything. Operation Tidal Wave concluded at 10:32 a.m. August 1, 1943. 178 B-24 Liberators had departed Benghazi that morning. 125 returned, 53 aircraft were lost. 310 airmen were killed, 54 captured, and 108 wounded, the single costliest air mission in American military history to that point. Losses exceeded even the worst predictions. Command had estimated 50% casualties. Overall aircraft losses were 30%, but among crews that reached the target, losses approached 60%. The 93rd Bomb Group suffered the heaviest toll. Addison Baker had led 18 bombers toward Ploesti after breaking formation. Only 11 returned to Libya. 7 aircraft were lost. 70 men dead or missing. Yet those 18 bombers had destroyed their assigned targets completely. The Astro Romana refinery was knocked offline for 3 months. The Uniaria facility remained closed for 6. Delayed fuse bombs had penetrated critical equipment. Cracking towers collapsed, pipeline networks ruptured, storage tanks burned for days. German engineers reported that full reconstruction would take years. Across Ploesti, other bomb groups achieved similar destruction. Refineries supplying 1/3 of Nazi Germany's fuel were crippled. Daily production dropped from 12 million barrels to less than 4 million, creating immediate problems for German operations. Luftwaffe's sortie rates decreased. Panzer divisions received reduced fuel allocations. U-boats spent less time on patrol. The strategic impact rippled across the Wehrmacht. Some historians estimate Operation Tidal Wave shortened the war in Europe by as much as 3 months. But the cost haunted military planners: 53 aircraft lost, 310 men killed, captured, or wounded. The mathematics were brutal. Command debated whether the results justified the losses, whether destroying the Ploesti oil refineries was worth the price in American lives. The debate persisted through the war. There was no clear answer. The oil was critical. The losses were catastrophic. Both facts remained true. 6 months later, Medal of Honor citations arrived. 5 men received America's highest military decoration for actions during Operation Tidal Wave, more than for any other single air operation in history. Lieutenant Colonel Addison Baker received the Medal of Honor posthumously. His citation highlighted that he flew his burning aircraft to the target despite the opportunity to land safely, led his group through Europe's heaviest defenses, and completed the mission at the cost of his life and those of his crew. Major John Jerstad also received a posthumous Medal of Honor. His citation noted that he volunteered for the mission after completing his required tour, served as Baker's co-pilot, stayed at his post in the burning aircraft, and chose to continue when survival was possible, dying in the process. At 25, he could have gone home to Oregon, yet he flew one final mission and never returned. The other 8 crew members of Hell's Wench, Harold Sweetman, John McCormick, James Merritt, Cecil Fight, and the 4 gunners, received no individual medals. Their names appeared on casualty lists. Families received standard wartime notifications explaining their sons had died over Romania. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Nothing conveyed the extraordinary courage it took to fly a burning bomber through Europe's deadliest defenses because their commanders asked them to. These men deserve to be remembered. Sharing their story preserves their legacy. Each like, each comment, each view ensures that Lieutenant Colonel Addison Baker, Major John Jerstad, and the crew of Hell's Wench are not forgotten. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping their memory alive. Thank you for honoring their sacrifice.